The German invasion marked the beginning of the greatest challenge Joseph Stalin had ever faced. During the first months of Operation Barbarossa, the Soviet Union suffered devastating losses. Entire armies were surrounded, thousands of tanks and aircraft were destroyed, and millions of soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. German forces advanced hundreds of miles into Soviet territory, capturing city after city and bringing the war closer to Moscow. For a brief period, confusion spread throughout the Soviet leadership. However, Stalin soon addressed the nation in a radio broadcast, calling on citizens to defend their homeland at any cost. Factories were dismantled in western regions and transported thousands of miles east, where production resumed far from the front lines. Workers labored day and night, producing tanks, aircraft, artillery, and ammunition that would become essential to the Soviet war effort. The Soviet people paid an extraordinary price. Soldiers fought in brutal conditions, while civilians endured bombings, shortages, and the destruction of entire communities. One of the most devastating episodes of the war was the Siege of Leningrad, where civilians survived through extreme hunger and hardship during a blockade that lasted for more than 2 years. The turning point came with the Battle of Stalingrad, lasting from 1942 to 1943. It became one of the largest and deadliest battles in history. Street by street and building by building, Soviet and German forces fought for control of the city. Eventually, Soviet troops surrounded the German Sixth Army, forcing its surrender. The victory at Stalingrad changed the course of the war on the Eastern Front and demonstrated that Nazi Germany could be defeated. From that point onward, the Soviet army steadily pushed westward. Major victories followed, including the Battle of Kursk, one of history's largest tank battles. By 1944, Soviet forces had liberated much of their occupied territory and continued advancing into Eastern Europe. In the spring of 1945, Soviet troops entered Berlin after weeks of intense fighting. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered in Europe. The victory came at an enormous human cost. The Soviet Union lost millions of soldiers and civilians during the war, making it one of the countries that suffered the greatest losses in World War II. Following the Allied victory, Stalin emerged as one of the world's most influential leaders. Alongside the United States and the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union helped shape the post-war international order. However, cooperation between the wartime allies soon gave way to growing political tensions. As governments in Eastern Europe came under Soviet influence, relations between the Soviet Union and Western nations deteriorated. These disagreements eventually developed into the Cold War, a decades-long period of political rivalry, military competition, and ideological conflict between the Soviet-led Eastern Bloc and the Western Alliance, led by the United States. Although the two superpowers avoided direct large-scale war against one another, they competed in nuclear weapons, scientific research, intelligence operations, and global influence. The Cold War would continue long after Stalin's lifetime. Inside the Soviet Union, Stalin remained firmly in control. His leadership style continued to emphasize centralized authority, strict political control, and national security. Even after World War II, many citizens lived under close government supervision, while political dissent remained tightly restricted. On March 5, 1953, Joseph Stalin died at the age of 74 after suffering a stroke. News of his death spread rapidly across the Soviet Union and around the world. Millions mourned the leader who had guided the country through World War II, while others hoped his death would mark the beginning of political change. In the years that followed, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev publicly criticized many aspects of Stalin's rule, especially the widespread political repression and the cult of personality that had developed. around him. This process became known as de-Stalinization, as the Soviet government gradually moved away from several of Stalin's policies. Today, Joseph Stalin remains one of the most controversial figures in modern history. Many historians recognize his role in transforming the Soviet Union into a major industrial and military power and in leading the country during the defeat of Nazi Germany. At the same time, historians also document the immense human suffering associated with political repression, forced collectivization, famine, mass arrests, and the Gulag labor camp system during his rule. Because of these sharply different perspectives, debates about Stalin continue in classrooms, universities, museums, and historical research around the world. His legacy cannot be understood through a single label. It is a story of rapid industrial growth alongside immense human cost, of military victory alongside political repression, and of a leader whose decisions shaped the 20th century in ways that are still studied today. History is rarely simple. It is filled with difficult choices, competing narratives, and lasting consequences. Joseph Stalin's life remains one of the clearest examples of how one leader's decisions can influence millions of lives and alter the course of world history for generations. The end.